In today's tier list, I'll be ranking all the best users of Arcane Nihility and the best users of Beast Sense 4 as well. I'll also be showing off the best builds for this new arcane weapon, from budget all the way up to max investment. Today's video will also be a bit different, as I will have two tier lists for this weapon. One focused just on the best users of the weapon, and one showing off who gets the biggest upgrade from this weapon. Unlike many other arcane weapons that can be a massive upgrade for heroes, this one is only available to Beast Cavalry units, and Beast units are very special as they always get preference weapons. With that in mind, this weapon isn't going to be as big of an upgrade. Now before we jump in, let's quickly go over Arcane Nihility's effects. First, we have Slaying, which is standard for arcane weapons, but is a big upgrade for many Beast units who only have +3 to 1 stat. Second, we have +5 to all stats as long as the unit is 25% HP or higher, pretty typical there. Third, the unit gets a Binding Necklace effect, which essentially steals the opponent's visible stat buffs. Fourth, we get 15% true damage based off the unit's speed. And then fifth, we get full no fall, which is really nice on these cavalry units. And then lastly, we get a new Cavalry Beast Transformation effect, where the hero inflicts attack and defense -X on the foe based off how many spaces they or the enemy moved before combat, with the penalty maxing out at 6. And also, if that wasn't enough, we get 30% damage reduction against the first attack if X equals 5, so as long as either the unit or the enemy moved 2 spaces before combat. Overall, this is a very powerful arcane weapon, offering a ton of damage, a bit of survivability, and the potential for a ton of stats. With that in mind, let's jump into our first tier list. Okay, starting off with this tier list, the first thing I really want to mention is that Freya will be getting a refine and remix in 6 to 8 months. So what does that mean? It means that if you have patience, you can wait until then and then see if her remix or refine is better, and then do an inheritance with Arcane Nihility and maybe Beast Sense as well. But if you aren't patient and you're a big giant Freya fan, this is a big upgrade for her, so that is just something to consider. Now let's start at the bottom with Dote, and these two units I would just not recommend ever inheriting this weapon, and the reason for that is Nerthus already has an amazing PRF weapon as well as a PRF skill, so there's really no reason to give her this weapon at all. And then when it comes to Freyr is extremely slow. He just cannot take full potential of this weapon in the slightest, and so just do not inherit to him no matter what. Okay, the rest of these units technically do get an upgrade from this weapon, though some of them do have pretty solid weapons. Let's start at C tier with Kaden. So Kaden is in a position where he wants to be a support unit. That's what his weapon really wants to do, and so if you do want to give this to him, he can use it, but he will be playing a completely different role. So if you're like a big giant Kaden fan and you've always wanted to use him to kill things, then this could be a good weapon for him. Then we have two other units in Pan and Yarn who just don't have the speed that many of the other cavalry units do. In B tier, we have some units with some pretty solid speed, but they do kind of lack behind some of the units above them, as well as having like a bit of a more iffy stat line, with some of them not having the best of attack. And then in A tier, we have units with a bit more speed than the ones in B, and finally in S tier, we have the units who I consider to have the best stat lines for this weapon, but once again, they do have decently good weapons as well, so that is something to consider, and something we will be going over in the second tier list. When it comes to the best unit, I do think Summer Freya definitely ekes out everybody else with her amazing stat line, and the thing is her preference skill, Binding Necklace, is really not that great, and unlike normal Freya, who will get a remix to it, Summer Freya will not. So this is a great chance to not only upgrade her weapon, but give her a different beast skill and let her really shine that way. Because the thing is with Summer Freya, at this current pace, she will not get her refine until like December of 2026, which is quite a ways away. So if you're a big Summer Freya fan, this is a chance to give her a massive upgrade and make her a ton more powerful. Now let's move on to our second tier list, and this is one where we're talking about upgrades in particular, right? This is a tier list that focuses on the difference of power between their base preference weapon and this new arcane weapon. So once again, at the bottom, we do have Nerthus and Freyr, not a big surprise. And right above that, we have a side grade. So essentially, like I said, Kaden is a support unit. So if you want to turn him into an offensive unit, you can, but typically he wants to fulfill that support role. And then we do have New Year's Selkie, who does have a very solid weapon, so you don't really need to upgrade her, but if you do want to swap things around a little bit and give her some different effects, then that is an option. Above that, we have weapons that have a tiny upgrade, and I'm talking about minuscule. New Year's Lethe has one of the best weapons we have currently right here, and I don't honestly think she needs the weapon very much at all, as she can really stack a ton of damage reduction with her existing PRF, and the same could be with Selkie as well. Above that, we have a solid upgrade for units like Lethe, Pan, New Year's Pan, and New Year's Yarn. In particular for New Year's Yarn, it does give her full no fall, which means she can play more of like a mixed phase role better, and she also gets 15% true damage, which is very nice for her nuking capabilities. On the other hand, we have New Year's Yarn. Honestly, I don't really enjoy his preference weapon very much. I think the -2 cooldown, like with the HP condition, just doesn't work all that well, especially because he is missing Slaying. So I do think this is a solid upgrade for him to make him overall a better unit. In the good upgrade tier list, we of course have Summer Freya. Summer Freya's weapon's not bad by any means, but this is a big upgrade for her, and it does make her a lot more powerful, and she does have an optimal stat line for it, so I think this is a great choice for her, especially because she won't be getting a refine for so long. We also have that with New Year's Caden, who does get a ton of speed, but other than that, his weapon doesn't do much. Then we go to Yarn, who got a decent refine. He does have some speed-based true damage, but his whole gimmick of -2 special cooldown really doesn't work all that well in his weapon, so I think this is just a much better weapon for him overall. And the same thing could be said with Randolph, who does get nice amount of true damage, but has a weird effect on it, and he also kind of has a weapon that wants to do mixed amount of support and then also doing damage. I think it's better just to consolidate the whole role in an arcane weapon. And then finally, we have the big upgrades, and this is going to be for Freya and New Year's Lyre. Now once again, Freya is getting that refine and remix in less than a year, so if you can be patient, I would be, but if not, this is a massive upgrade for Freya. Freya's weapon is not great. The only big advantage you really get with that weapon is distant counter, but I'll tell you like I always do, tanking as a cav is just not the way you want to go. You do not want to play Omni-Take role, and until Freya gets some kind of insane refine or remix, she's not going to do well in that role, so you're better off with an arcane weapon. And then we have Lyre, who's in an interesting position as she does have a very recent stat line, but her weapon just doesn't really synergize all that well. She kind of wants to be a Gale Force unit, but she doesn't have slaying, so her special acceleration doesn't really work out all that well. So it might as well go with an Arcane Nihility, take advantage of that massive speed stat and having her do a ton more damage and getting a ton more survivability with that full no follow-up. The last thing you do have to consider, of course, is that some of these units will be getting the updated Cavalry Beast transformation effect if they have a refine, but many of these other units, like New Year's Lyre or New Year's Pan or New Year's Yarn, will not get that updated effect until they get the refine, which is very, very far away. So this is a way to upgrade into that new effect if you want to do that. Okay, next let's move on to some builds, and let's start off with some budget. So if you are like on a very big budget, the first build on New Year's Lyre is going to be the one for you, as it is pretty easy to get attack speed solo 3 now, so you can run a build like this, which is kind of like a mixed phase build with some nice Canto built into it. It's going to be good, but honestly, if you invest into her, obviously she's going to be a lot better. Next, we have one for New Year's Pan, and as she does come with attack speed clash 3, you can take advantage of that. Low speed defense is going to allow her to get through those annoying bonuses and do a ton of damage as well, so that's a nice build for on budget. And then if you want to invest a bit more, you can go with the build on Lete, where you're getting attack speed catch 4, which isn't too difficult to get, running that trace, and then even speed smoke, so you're going to be able to get some stacking damage reduction after that first combat, which is always nice. But if you want to go big and you really want to invest into your favorites, these are the 3 builds you're going to be going for. Now the first build is a max damage reduction build. Essentially what this is going to do is going to rely on the damage reduction built into Arcane Nihility through that transformation effect, and then also Beast Sense, and then after the first combat you even get Speed Smoke for damage reduction, which gets really ridiculous, right? The thing is with this build is that it is expensive, because unfortunately Beast Sense 4 cannot be inherited at the same time as Arcane Nihility, because Intelligent Systems hates us, so that means you're going to have to sacrifice 2 aiders to get this build. But if you do, it's going to be a very, very powerful build, and it's going to be amazing, and it's could probably be the best build you can go with this weapon. But if you want to go with more an offensive build, you can go with the second build on Summer Freya, where you're going with attack speed clash, you're going with low speed defense 4, which is going to give you a massive speed advantage, while also doing a ton more damage through all that true damage in the weapon. And then lastly, you also get alarm attack speed, which you can pick up on Aider as well, which is going to give that Canto 1, which is really nice. And then lastly, of course, we have to show off a build on my boy Randolph, and this is a hit and run build. Essentially what you're going to do is you're going to run in, hit, get hit once, then proc Bonfire on your second hit. This build it takes advantage of Beast Sense Trace 3, which allows you to always keep that transformation up while giving you a Canto as well. And then we even have Defense Res Smoke 3 here, so after you're done retreating, you can act as a Pathfinder unit and allow the rest of your team to engage after you. Overall, I do think these are the 3 best builds you can run with this weapon, and they are extremely powerful. Definitely a nice solid upgrade for all these Cavalry Beasts. But with that said, let's move on to the second part of the video and talk about Beast Sense 4, our new tier 4 beast skill for beast units, and oh my god, I am so excited about this. But what does this skill actually do? Well, you get to remove the transformation condition on your beast unit, which is really nice because that means you're always going to be transformed. You don't have to worry about what kind of team composition you're running. You can just throw your beast unit in there. But you're also getting a stat advantage, which is really nice. We've seen this on like Close Call 4 and Repel 4, right? But it's been lacking on the other beast skills we've gotten as they're not tier 4. So this is a really nice way to get some extra speed into your beast slot. But most importantly, you're getting speed-based damage reduction, which has been missing for beast units for so very long. I don't know why they wouldn't just let them use Close Call or Repel or wherever else, but for some reason they didn't. So we finally have it. And we even get the nice phantom speed effect as well with a +7 to speed when you're doing a speed check. So overall, this is a very nice effect for beast units and definitely something that has been lacking for them for a very long time. Now there are two downsides to the skill we have to consider, and that is first, this is only 40% damage reduction, while Close Call and Repel do give 50%, so it is a minor disadvantage, but you do get to remove the condition for your transformation, so I would say it kind of comes out even. And then of course the other thing I mentioned earlier is that there is no Beast Sense 3 in the game currently, meaning you have to sacrifice a whole 8er just to get this skill, which can be rough. So that means typically you're not going to be able to get the Arcane Weapon and Beast Sense 4, you're going to probably pick one or the other, unless you are a whale or like super in love with the unit and you want to sacrifice 2 8ers. With that in mind, let's move on to the Beast Sense tier list. Let's start off at the very bottom with the Don't tier. Now this is a combination of Nerthus, who actually is a very speedy unit, but she has her own preference skill, so there's no real reason to give this to her. And then of course Freyr and everybody else in the Don't tier is slow. And because they are so slow, they're really not going to be able to take advantage of the speed-based damage reduction. You can try to be like Satachi and like stack as much speed as possible on these units to try to make it work, but it's always going to be a struggle compared to just how fast units are nowadays, so I would not recommend it. Then the next tier up, and my wasn't recommend tier, these are units who could technically use this skill, but I still would just not really rely on that. Tiburn is not the fastest unit, even if you speed stack him, so it's not going to really help him all that much. And when it comes to the 2 Flying Dancers, I think Beast and Trace is just a way better beast skill for them, as they don't really want to be in combat all that much. They really just want to go in, dance, and then be able to get out. And when it comes to Raphael, I just think Wings of Mercy 4 is just a way better option overall. Okay, down in C tier, this might seem a bit weird, as some of these units were pretty high on the last tier for big upgrades. And the reason why they are here is because they really want the Arcane Weapon and Beast Sense 4. So they're in C tier because honestly, I would rather give them the weapon than Beast Sense. But if you really love these units a ton, you can give them both and they can make use of it. Just know it's going to be very, very expensive. So that's why they're down in C tier. In B tier, we do have some speedy units, but they do have like 1 or 2 things holding them back. For example, Brown Nyla and New Year's Valoria don't have the new beast transformation effect for infantry, so that is something to consider. And also their weapons are a bit outdated. They are kind of waiting for refines. And then up in A tier, we have some units who can use this skill very well, but they do have one downside each. And the thing is with Valoria, I would say, is that her best build really is as a support unit. Now, if you're like a Valoria fanatic and you want to just build her to do damage and be like the main star of your team, then you can give her Beast Sense and she can work with it quite well. Then we come to Emblem, and Emblem is a very interesting case because when it comes to Emblem, you think she would be one of the best users in the entire game. She definitely has the stat line for it, and she already has that speed smoke effect in her weapon, so she can stack damage reduction. The one thing that holds Emblem back, in my opinion, is that she doesn't have offensive no follow-up in her weapon, right? It's in her B slot. So if you do end up giving it to her, that is something you're going to have to consider, that she can miss kills because she won't be able to double sometimes. So that is something just holding her back, in my opinion. Then we go to Elm. Elm's actually a very strong unit that just no one uses. He gets a ton of free damage. He gets a ton of free damage reduction that can stack with Beast Sense, which would be very nice. The only thing holding him back, in my opinion, is that he doesn't have defensive no follow-up, which can hold him back a little bit. Then we have Selkie, who does just get an absurd amount of stats from her weapon, so she really can hit those speed checks very nicely. But once again, she doesn't have defensive no follow-up, so that is something to consider. And the same can be said for Pan, Nysala, and Pirate Nysala as well. Only rocking that offensive no follow-up can definitely hold them back, and some of them are a bit more squishy, not really having a defensive stat line to take some hits. Okay, let's move up into S tier, and these are the units I consider to be the best users of Beast Sense 4, and the reason for that mostly is that they have full no follow-up. That is such a pivotal thing when you're trying to play a mixed phase unit, because you really don't want to get engaged on and then not be able to one-shot them and then they explode you on the second hit, right? You need to be able to deny their follow-up attacks. And considering these are all fast units, they shouldn't have any problem winning speed checks. Okay, let's talk about New Year's Lethe first, because I think she is a pivotal case for this B skill. The thing is with New Year's Lethe, right, she has built-in speed-based damage reduction in her weapon already, and she has phantom speed built into her weapon. So what does that mean? It means that she can stack up a ton of damage reduction. Just with the transformation effect, her weapon, and Beast Sense 4, she gets up to 75% damage reduction. That's not even counting if you put Speed Smoke 4 on her. She can get even more after that first combat. And then you have to consider that she gets up to plus 17 speed for speed checks, because she has the 7 from Beast Sense 4, and then she has the 10 from her weapon, which means it's extremely difficult to actually get past that damage reduction for New Year's Lethe. It makes her extremely tanky, extremely difficult to take down, and thanks to the power her weapon offers, she can even do a ton of damage and secure a ton of kills. So I think that she is the best user in the game currently, and if you're a big New Year's Lethe fan, I definitely think you should consider giving it to her. Next up is Summer Freya. Once again, Summer Freya's weapon isn't too bad as it is, so giving her Beast Sense 4 will allow her to stack that damage reduction, kind of similar to New Year's Lethe as well, and she has full no follow-up, so she can use it well. Now we move on to New Year's Selkie, and New Year's Selkie is an interesting unit because she actually is very resistance heavy, and they gave her Dragon Wall. So that means you can stack Dragon Wall with the Beast Sense 4 damage reduction, and once again, just have a very tanky cav unit who can put out some good damage and also just survive a ton of hits. And then we move on to our 3 big infantry units in my opinion. Infantry definitely take full advantage of this weapon as they can get no follow-up not only from their own weapon or from skills, but also just from outside sources. This makes B-Sense 4 ridiculously good on them and allows them to act as like very powerful bruiser units who can go in, do some big damage, and kill some things. And the cool thing is, as infantry beast units, they get full tempo in their transformation, which is a very big deal, as you can essentially guarantee your own specials and deny a lot of specials from your foes as well. I think all 3 of these infantry units use it extremely well with their very competitive speed stats. And they also offer some unique effects as well, as both Nihilus have Canto built in the weapon, and Morum has his crazy debuffs. My final thoughts on this is that Beast Sense 4 is a fantastic skill and it's a great sign of what is to come. It's a great upgrade for beast units, and I'm hoping that we get more of these in the future, including a beast special. But with that, all my tier lists are complete, and now I'd love to hear from you. What are your plans for Arcane Nihility if you pulled it, and what are your plans for Beast Sense 4? I would love to hear about it in the comment section down below. Tell me all about the favorite units you're going to be building and what kind of builds you're going to be running on them. As always, I'd like to thank my members for all their constant support, and if you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe. This has been Oblivion. I'll catch you all later.